Coming up on the Amazing Art Show, Literature Collages. Hi, and welcome to another edition of the Amazing Art Show. I'm your host, Angie Beam, and today we are going to be doing some literature collages. So what that means is you're going to pick your favorite book. I happen to pick this lovely book that we just happened to be reading this past week, and you get to make yourself one of the main characters of the book. So let me kind of go over the things that you're going to need. You're going to need your inspiration point, your book that you want to be the main character in. This particular book has cats, and it has a little witch in it. She's a very nice little witch, but she has a very mischievous little cat. So that's kind of true in my life. Not that I'm a witch, but I have a very mischievous cat. So that kind of intrigued me, so I decided I would do that book. Your book, anything you can think of. It could be an adventure, it could be a mystery, it could be whatever you'd like for it to be. You are going to need a photo of yourself, and like your school photo works perfect. But what you're going to do is you're going to make a photocopy of it just on the copy machine, and then you're going to cut out your head. And depending on how large photos you have, you kind of sometimes have to reduce it down a little bit, but you want it around kind of the size of a golf ball, smaller than a tennis ball, so kind of in between those two sizes. And you're going to cut it off, so it really doesn't matter what your body's doing down below because you're cutting it off anyways. And my copy did not turn out that fabulous. You will notice that I've got lines that are going through my head. Don't do that, but that's all I had. So it'll work just fine, so we'll make it work. So you're going to need that. You're going to need gesso, which is basically like, it helps the glue, it helps the paint to adhere to your board, which I'm about to show you next. You're going to need some kind of a piece of wood, and any size you would like to do works just fine. And you're just going to coat the gesso on there, so you'll just need a little bit of the gesso, so not a whole lot. You want to make sure you rinse out your brush really well after you've used the gesso. And then any kind of acrylic paints that you want to use works great on this. So, you know, I typically like the Apple Barrel brand, but any kind will work as long as it says it's an acrylic. It'll work just fine. You might also want to grab some of the slick paints. Those work really well as well. And then you'll need some various sizes of your brushes. You'll need pencils, eraser, that kind of stuff, as well as some Sharpie markers. And that, oh wait, and I also forgot, Mod Podge. And Mod Podge it's just a little kind of a glue. This is going to help us do our collage work today, which is how we're going to get this head to stick onto your board. All right, so let's get started today. All right, so grab your boards, and through the magic of TV, my board is already done. Your board, you're going to put the gesso on it. You want a nice thin coat that is going to cover everything, seal everything. You want to get your edges really good. Don't forget about these edges up here. And then you're going to need to let this dry. Now the good news is the gesso dries really, really quick. All right? Okay, so we'll pretend like you're there, and that's done. Or you could just pause us momentarily while you do your gesso. All right, so you want to have your head and go ahead and get that cut out, because you're going to want to kind of lay it down, which will kind of give you, you know, an idea of how you want to lay things out. And the one thing I want you to kind of keep in mind is that your head is going to be bigger than your body. And depending on how big your board is that you're working on, mine is very narrow and skinny, will kind of depend on what other things that you might want to draw in your background. So keep that in mind. And we want these to be really super nice and colorful. Like always, you know I'm not afraid of color. So you want lots and lots of color. We want them to be very, very whimsical and fun. So kind of keep that in mind with your design when you're thinking about, well, what is my main character wearing? You know, think about, it doesn't have to be exactly like what's in your book. Your book is just kind of your jumping off point, your inspiration point, just give you some ideas, all right? So I also pulled just a couple little pictures that I found that were on the internet that just gave me some ideas of some things that I might want to do. All of my witches are very friendly witches because I like friendly witches. I don't know any witches, but I would like for them to be friendly if I did. All right, so I'm going to lay my head down. Decide if you want to tilt your head or if you want it to be straight up and down. If you tilt it, it gives it a little more attitude, a little more fun, so you might kind of think about that. Think about any props that you might like to add, like I'm going to be petting my little mischievous cat here. And so I've got my cat in my lap, and then I'm going to decide kind of what is going to be in my background. And so you're just going to sketch that out with your pencil. And I'm going to finish kind of sketching here real quick. And remember to go back and erase anything that you don't want to have showing. So I want my hand to be on top of my cat. And you don't have to really stress too much about itty bitty little details on here. And then I was trying to decide, I don't know if I wanted my hand to come over here and hold the other side of the cat. I kind of think instead I'm going to have like a magic wand in this hand. I just kind of decided that right now. All right, so I'm going to do my magic wand, and I'm thinking about what my hand's going to look like when I'm holding it. I get my kids all the time when we're trying to draw something. They're like, well, I don't know what that looks like. I say, hold your hand that way and look at it. So that will help you kind of get your fingers aligned the way you want them. And then you can be holding whatever it is you want to hold. All right, so I've got my, I think I want my magic wand to have a star on it. And then you also want to think about what is going to be the setting for your picture. And I'm going to have mine up in the sky like at night. So I'm thinking about like I'm sitting on a crescent moon. So I'm going to draw the moon kind of coming up like I'm sitting on it. And I'm going to move my head temporarily. All right, so I've got my crescent moon there. My head's going to go back there. It'll cover it up just a little bit. I think you can still tell what it is. I want to add some other things that would go into my picture, so I'm going to add a couple clouds kind of coming in here and some stars in my picture. Don't need a whole lot because kind of you are the main focus of this piece of work. All right, so I've got, I think, pretty much everything I want. So I'm going to take my head off because I don't need that at the moment. And then the next thing that I need you to do is you are going to outline everything with your marker. You can use one of the thinner markers or you can use the thick ones. It really doesn't matter. You just want one that has some good coverage. And this kind of helps when you're painting, kind of helps you to stay in your lines. And when you get finished, you can always re-outline if you happen to get out of your lines a little bit, which more than likely I probably will today. It happens. My kids that are taking private lessons with me right now, we are working on this project right now, and it is looking so cute. Their heads look so fabulous, and I like what they've added. They did theirs a little different. They did not base theirs off of a book. They based theirs off of some kind of an activity that they love to do. So this is, if you're not big on the whole book idea, you know, you could just, you know, get inspiration from maybe you play a sport or maybe you do something else that you think is lots of fun, and maybe that'll be your inspiration point. The other thing is with the black marker, if you've got something on your picture that you're going to make all black, you can save yourself some time and kind of cheat a little bit. Did you hear me say that? I said cheat. Just a little bit. It'll be okay. I said it was okay, so it's okay. And you can actually just go ahead and color it in with the marker. And if you don't like it, you can always go back over with black paint. All right, so I'm going to fill in my cat. We'll save that step, and that'll be done. My cat's ears are looking a little bizarre, but that's okay. I'm going to be real careful right in here. All right, so once you get done outlining everything, or in our case, filling in everything, you are going to be ready to start painting. And the one thing I will tell you with this wood, even though you did the gesso on it, you're more than likely going to have to do 2 coats of paint. So kind of keep that in mind. And you want to kind of think about your color choices, because if you do, you know, a really, really dark background, but let's say you want, you know, your person's costume or something is really, really dark as well, you might want to kind of rethink your color choices. So, you know, kind of keep that in mind. It's all like part of a big plan, so you have to think about all the parts that go into it. I think I better switch to a smaller marker for this last part. I kind of messed up my fingers over there, but that's okay. I think it's going to work okay. All right, so I've just about got this part finished. And then we're going to start the color part. Okay. So be thinking about your colors, like I said before. Be thinking about what colors you're going to use. And I'm going to come back in a minute and I'll color in my boots with the marker. That way it'll just go a little bit faster. All right, so on your color, I like to start in my background first, and I, you know, paint everything in my background first. And it's kind of up to you on how you would like to do that. You can do it that way or not. And I'm going to grab some scrap paper that I'm going to put my paint on. Since I'm doing kind of a night sky, I don't know what that was rolling, but I was trying to catch it. All right, a couple things I'll tell you. I see a lot of times my kids, when they get access to these itty bitty little brushes, I don't know what's so exciting about these itty bitty little brushes, but something is very exciting about them. These are to get into itty bitty little teeny tiny spaces that your big brush can't get into. So save these for itty bitty little places, not big places. So do as much as you can with your big brush before you switch over to your smaller brush. So when I say that, that means, you know, work into those areas as much as you can. And then if you see that it's something that you can't really get in there because it's too small of a space, then switch over to your bigger brush. So I'm just going to very carefully carry this up, and I'm going to just keep working, and I want to get up as close as I can to it. And then in a few minutes, when I get done using the big brush, then I can go in and use my little brush, and I can get into these little bitty places. A couple other things I was just thinking about. One thing that I was thinking that might make things a little bit easier for you guys is when you're getting ready to do your sketch, if you're kind of intimidated by, you know, working directly on the board, something you might want to also think about is that you could do a sketch on your piece of paper, just on a little sketch piece of paper. And then what you could do is come in separately, cut it out, and then you can use that to trace around. So you can make sure that you get everything on there the right way, you know, and fit on there. All right, so as I'm working, I'm going to kind of lift this up and show you guys. You can kind of see where I've got paint lines, and that's what, when you come back and you do your second coat, that's going to eliminate that. So right now it's there, but once you do your second coat, it won't be there. The other thing you want to avoid is big globs of paint, because it's going to take that paint a whole lot of time to dry, and it's going to be darker in that area than it might be in the rest of your design. So if you get a glob, like I've got a little bit of one right here, just go back over it and kind of pull the paint into, you know, either a direction that you don't have any paint. If you want to pull it down, you can pull it down or pull it up. Whichever works fine, as long as you just end up smoothing it out. All right, so what I would like to do at this point is we're going to switch over. So I'm going to put this one to the side, and I'm going to grab one that I've already been working on. I'll turn it so you guys can see. This one obviously is positioned a little bit different, and you'll notice that it is a headless witch, because I haven't put the head on yet. So we're going to talk about that. All right, so before we worry about the head though, I would like to reiterate that I want you guys to go back. Once you've painted everything, we were talking about, you know, when you get done painting, if you've gone out of the lines or anything like that, this is what I'm talking about. You can be so ever so careful when you're painting, but then there'll be times that you get a little bit out of the lines. And so one thing that you can do as an artist is you can kind of go back and fix your little mistakes. And that is just going back with the black marker and then going very slowly over your lines again and kind of cleaning up. Maybe the point that you wanted wasn't super, super crisp. You can kind of work on things like that. I've got like some details here on my skirt where it's zigzags, but when I was painting it, it's kind of hard to get into all of those little zigzags. So I ended up losing a little bit of that detail. So I can come back in now with my marker, and I can kind of reclaim those little details that I lost, even though I was being very careful when I was painting. And a lot of times as an artist, you'll notice it, but somebody else wouldn't. You're probably looking at it going, what in the world is she talking about? But I remember what it looked like when I first started, and that's how I want it to look when I get finished. So this is one way that you can go in and kind of clean up your edges, make sure everything looks really neat and nice. The other thing is, like down in these places where you've got white, you know, sometimes it bleeds over into other areas, so you can kind of clean those areas up as well, because you want it to look really, really nice and crisp. When I get done with my picture, I'm going to put it up for Halloween. So I'm glad that I'm getting it done today, because I'm about to be out of time. I'm not usually big into decorating for Halloween, but for whatever reason this year, I decided to get into it. So I've got my house all decorated. You can also go back in with your marker and add some other little details. You might think about maybe little scuff marks, things like that that you might want to add onto the costume. You can always go back and add those details, because sometimes those are very hard to get with an itty bitty little marker. And especially if you're doing something like on a hand, hands are very hard to paint. So you can kind of get in there. and kind of clean that up a little bit. All right, so I'm going to stop here for just a second, and I want to talk about gluing your head on. And I also want to talk about a part of my head that we didn't talk about in the other one, but you'll be able to see what I'm talking about here. I just can't quit tracing that. I just like it a lot. Okay, your head. I actually have got two heads here, and I'll explain to you why. Keep in mind that when you put your head on there, you might want to come back and put accessories like a hat or something like that that goes on your head. But if you just do it like this and you just put it on like that, it doesn't really look like you're wearing the hat. It looks like your head is in front of the hat. So you want to look like you're wearing the hat. So in order to do that, when you're doing out your sketch, like when we sketched it out here and we were drawing it and I laid it on here, part of your design might be that you're wearing a hat or jewelry or earrings or a baseball hat or whatever it is from your piece. So you can draw onto your head. So this is going to look a little weird right now, but when I put it together, you'll understand. You can draw onto your head parts of those accessories and actually paint them on there. So this is just my regular piece of paper, and it's just painted. I drew it with pencil first, outlined it with the black marker, and then have gone in and painted it. And I've actually got a piece of tape on here that I'm going to take off really quick. And I'm going to move this little head back over there. All right, so the next thing is you're going to need that Mod Podge that we talked about earlier, and you're going to need a pretty good amount of it. And I got to rinse out my brush. And basically you're going to paint it on, and then you're going to lay the piece down inside of it. All right, so what that means is I'm going to get a little bit of this here, and it just kind of looks like glue, but it's like a watery glue. And you want to paint all the way up to where the head is going to go, but you don't want to get outside of that. So kind of, usually what I do is I'll lay the head down and I kind of eyeball it. If you get outside the lines a little bit, it's okay, because eventually you're going to go over your whole board with this anyways. All right, so I've got, that looks pretty good to me. All right, so I'm going to lay this down on here. And since I have already been working on getting my part of my hat drawn on there, I've got to get it lined up. So I'm just kind of lining things as I'm moving. All right, my hands are wet. Okay, you're going to take it and you just want to smooth it down with your finger really, really well. If you get a wrinkle, just lift it up and then smooth it back out again. All right, so like, let's just pretend like I got a wrinkle here. I'm just going to use my fingernail and get up underneath there and just lift this up again like this, and then just smooth it back down again with my finger. All right, so you want to smooth it really, really well. At any point, if any of it is sticking up a little bit, that means that you didn't get any of the glue under there. So you've got to lift it back up, get some more glue under there. All right, so once you've got the glue, you're going to go back, and this time you're going to do a coat that paints over it. And you're going to go right over your face with it. And then once you get that done, as long as you have finished doing all of your other details on your painting, you can actually do the Mod Podge over everything. I'm going to stop because I'm not quite done with mine yet. But let's go to today's art quote. There are 3 things I've learned never to discuss with people: religion, politics, and the Great Pumpkin. Linus Van Pelt. And It's a Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. All right, a couple things that I want to talk to you about, kind of not last minute, but just some thoughts that I've had. I talked to you earlier about making sure that you gessoed the edges and the sides, and there was a reason to that, even though we're just now talking about it. I want you to think about doing some kind of a decorative element here. So, for example, what I mean by that is you want to make it a color, don't just leave it white. So kind of think about your color scheme and the things that you have going on in your picture, and then you're going to use your brush and paint the edges. Either, you know, it might match your background, you know, or maybe you want to bring out some color that is in your picture somewhere. So for starters, make it a color. And keep in mind that as you paint along the edges sometimes, your brush will kind of creep around to the front. So if that happens and you end up getting paint, like I've just got a little bit of dark on my cloud right there that's a little bit lighter. If you'll take a really wet brush, and this goes for any, like if you ever make a little mistake and you've been painting, if you'll get your brush really, really good and wet, you have to do it really quick, and you'll just rub across a couple times and just get it really good and wet, and you kind of push down with your brush. It kind of works like an eraser for you. And then you'll need a paper towel, and you'll just blot off the water, and it's like, voila. It's like a little magic eraser. All right, so you're going to continue to paint your edges, and then we talked about something decorative. So by decorative, that might mean, you know, you might want to do, you know, like circles or dots that go down the edge, or you might want to do, you know, maybe like little stripes of color. So I'm trying to get mine finished so I can kind of show you. So I've got just a good little thin coat of the blue on there. This makes such a difference if you'll finish off your edges. Looks really nice. Even just doing them in a solid color looks really nice, but if you'll take it a step further, that works even better. All right, so let's say I did that, and then maybe I just take my brush, and I'm going to actually use the end of my brush. I'm not using the bristles, I'm using the handle part, and I'm going to dip it down, and I'm just going to do a dot. And I would do something like that that goes all the way down the edges. And then, you know, when you've got it and it's hanging up on a wall somewhere, you've got this nice little kind of a decorative feeling to it. It makes people go, what's that? I want to go see that up close. Kind of draws them over there. And this technique of dotting, you know, you can use that. You might want to use it somewhere here. On my shirt, it's kind of hard to see on the camera, but I've got little dots on mine. And I used my small brush. And I don't even think I brought the brush that I was using, but you can use an itty bitty little brush and same thing. You can get small dots. You could use the end of your pencil eraser, works really well too, just to dip it down in, and then you can kind of stamp with it. So that works well too if you're needing to do something, you know, some kind of a pattern or something like that. All right, last thing I want to tell you before I let you go is this is the time that you can get out your glittery kind of paint, and you might want to kind of think about where you want it to kind of look magical. So definitely on my stars, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit of finger painting, because I'm just going to kind of rub this in with my finger. I definitely want some serious kind of magic coming out of my magical wand here, because I don't have a magical wand, but if I did, things would be going really different at school, let me just tell you. So you can do that and kind of add your little details there. And then remember, one of those last steps that we talked about was taking that Mod Podge, and then once everything is dry, and then you paint a solid coat of the Mod Podge over everything. And that means your edges, your face again, everything again. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for today. Thank you so much for joining us for another edition of The Amazing Art Show. Now go out and make some amazing art.